Hello, everybody. Welcome into Lower League America from Compass Football. Jason Davis, as always, joined by Nipun Chopra from SocTakes.com. We're here to talk about the lower divisions of soccer in the United States. And we're going to do first, Nipun, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Jason?
Such an interesting report we have, Nipun. It's that time of the show. We do this every week before we get into our main topic, the legal issues surrounding lower division soccer in the U.S. And Miki Turner, who's going to join us to break it all down from a legal perspective. We got some news, and we got Nipun's shout out. Let's do the shout out, Nipun. Who you got today?
I got Red Bulls 2 today. As always, they did really well in the playoffs. Of course, they just lost to Louisville City, but always a team that does great in the playoffs, led by John. How do I say his last name? Wolniak.
Wolniak. I don't know. He's from Staten Island. If you say Wolniak, I think that's fine. I think that works.
I think of when I think of John Wolniak is this dance that he once did famously.
Okay. The Michael Jackson Thriller dance is what you're telling me.
He scored. But yeah, shout out New York Red Bulls to a very important team in USL and a team that has produced some fantastic players, some of whom are at an elite level, like Matt Miazga and Matt Olosunde, etc.
Tyler Adams has played for New York Red Bulls too, and I believe a couple of others. Aaron Long came in through there, now a U.S. men's national team player. So yeah, good shout out, USL team, lower division, Red Bulls 2, reserve team for the New York Red Bulls. All right, we got some news here to go over before we get to Miki Turner and the legal stuff. Nipun, USL D3, we've got news. We got a number of teams, we got a number of games, we got a schedule, or at least a set of months in which these games are going to be played.
Yes, USL League One will have 10 teams next year. They will play from March through October, 28 games. So it'll be pretty much a similar setup as USL, what will be USL Championship. USL Championship will probably go another week after that, and who knows, maybe there'll be, hint, maybe there'll be a cup competition in between winners later on.
I believe that with the 10 teams we've got for next year, and there's going to be a couple more added, Penn FC, Rochester Rhinos expected to join the league, but I believe that means everybody plays everybody else at least 3 times, and then you play one team 4 times. So I'm sure they'll try to manipulate some rivalry elements. That's a lot of games against the same team, Nipun.
Yeah, it's sort of following the NASL format from 2017, where there were 8 teams and they played each other 4 times over the year. 10 teams is not ideal, but Jason, I think there's a conversation to be had over here about the struggles of starting a new league. Even a league, a well-known, successful brand as USL has found it difficult to start a new league at the Division 3 level. You know what is another piece of evidence for that, Jason? The first one, obviously, 10 teams, right? Not a fantastic number, a good number, more than the 8 teams required for sanctioning. But another piece of evidence, Jason, is out of those 10 teams, about half are teams that are either dropping down from D2 or are MLS 2 teams. In other words, about 4 or 5 independent teams out of the 10. Independent, of course, in quotation marks. And I think that that is why we are seeing why NISA is struggling and NPSL Pro are struggling. That even a league that is well known as USL is having trouble getting teams off a new league off the board, off the mark.
The ground, the mark, the starting line. Absolutely. USL D3, 10 teams for next year. We'll see how it goes. It's experimental. I mean, obviously the structure of USL helps a lot. Of course, we are closely watching NISA and NPSL Pro, which may be coming soon, and perhaps we'll have updates in future episodes on those leagues. We have to hit on the USL final. Louisville City going back to the final, hosting the final again. Phoenix Rising, the Didier Drogba-led team, beating Orange County in the Western Conference Final. Nipun, by the time a lot of people watch this, that final will be in the books. But certainly congratulations to both these sides.
Fantastic stories, both of them. Very quickly, Louisville City is the powerhouse of USL. I mean, 3 consecutive finals, won last year against Red Bulls, lost the year before that. This year, they beat Red Bulls again in the final, and now they're playing for the Cup against Phoenix Rising, a team that had 700 traveling fans, over 700 traveling fans, traveled to Orange County. The game itself was kind of unremarkable. It's a 1-0 win, or 2-1 win, sorry. with Drogba winning what ended up being the winner. But I have a feeling that given that Drogba will be playing his last professional game in Louisville City, I think there might be an upset here, even though Louisville City is a fantastic, elegant team to watch.
5-1 win for Louisville City in the Eastern Conference Final over the aforementioned Red Bulls too.
Yeah.
They tacked on. It maybe wasn't that bad in terms of the play. Okay, fair enough. Nipun says it was. I think what's interesting here, Nipun, to note is that while Louisville City has won games at home in the playoffs at Slugger Field, this game is going to be taking place at Lynn Stadium at the University of Louisville. A bigger open space, a dedicated soccer stadium might change things for Louisville City a bit.
Yeah, we don't know what output or outcome will happen because of this random change, but suffice to say, Louisville City will have 12, 13, 14,000 people there, and they will be loud and they will be obnoxious, and they will be the home support that Louisville City needs. The club is buoyed by their fans. The fans and the players have a strong relationship. That was never more apparent than when Louisville City had three player managers early on this year before Hackworth took over. So there's a bond between the fans and the team, and I think it's always galvanized this team, and hopefully it does again on Thursday.
We shall see what happens. By the time you see us again, we'll have a USL champion. Let's step aside. When we come back, we'll get into the meat of the show. We'll talk legal issues. We'll talk NASL suing US Soccer. We'll talk Court of Arbitration for Sport and Promotion Relegation with Miki Turner. Stick around. Back on Lower League America from Compass Football, we're taking a look at some legal issues around the lower divisions of soccer in the United States. We've got the NASL versus US Soccer, and we have a Court of Arbitration for Sport filing in relation to promotion and relegation. We'll start with the NASL lawsuit. We bring in Miki Turner, our legal analyst. Miki's blog is socceresq.com, where he covers some of the biggest legal issues in American soccer. And Miki, I think for a lot of people, the first question is, what is the goal for NASL in suing US Soccer?
That's a big question, and I'd say there's three main things that they're looking for. Number one is to get back on the field and play, obviously. That goal will be facilitated by a ruling which allows which orders that U.S. Soccer is not authorized to essentially regulate professional soccer in the United States via the professional league standards. That's what started this whole thing when U.S. Soccer decided that NASL did not meet the professional league standards and didn't have a path to do so, and that's when they revoked their sanctioning. So if NASL is successful, U.S. Soccer will not be able to regulate NASL or professional league soccer, and NASL essentially will be able to do what they will in trying to challenge MLS, which I think is their ultimate goal. Related to the lawsuit, obviously there are damages that NASL is requesting based on the alleged conspiracy between U.S. Soccer and MLS to prevent NASL from competing on a level playing field. There's money damages involved in that. We'll see where that goes. But those are the main things that they're asking for: be able to play, prevent U.S. Soccer from being able to regulate professional soccer, and money damages.
And Miki, from your perspective, what do you think is the status of the lawsuit from your perspective? We reached out to Rishi Sehgal and we got comment from him, but I'm curious, from your legal standpoint, where do you think the lawsuit stands right now?
Yeah, well, it's full speed ahead, essentially. Recall that when U.S. Soccer was first fighting the lawsuit before MLS was involved, they were planning to file a motion to dismiss the entire lawsuit. Once the injunction was denied, and they were required to either file the motion to dismiss or just answer the claims that NASL is making, they decided to file an answer and forego the motion to dismiss. So that meant that we are on a trial track. And so the parties right now are in the process of exchanging discovery. They had some contentious issues over the summer trying to determine what discovery was proper for each side to turn over. They went into court in September, argued the case. The judge heard their arguments, and to be fair, both sides were able to resolve most of the discovery issues and agree to turn over what information they were each side was wanting. But the few issues that they weren't able to agree on, they went into court in September and got a ruling shortly thereafter, which granted each side portions of what they wanted. So at this point, each side has what they want or should have what they want here. There's a deadline of April 30th to have all discovery completed. And so they're just in the process of going through the discovery process right now. Related to that, finally, is they will be deposing each side through interviews. And so that process is probably going to happen after discovery is turned over. So that's another thing to look forward to, is getting people under oath and getting them interviewed.
Real quick here, Nipun. I want to first. You said you reached out to Rishi Siegel from NASL. He did say we're in discovery. There's no immediate next steps other than for discovery to continue. The court has ordered that discovery, as Miki said, by April 30th, 2019. And I don't know where you wanted to go, Nipun. I'll certainly let you jump in. But I'm curious if we could unpack a bit what each side is looking for. I mean, obviously, NASL is suing US Soccer. They want to find that evidence of collusion. And I wonder what kind of form that takes, Miki. And then the other side of it is that although it's NASL suing US Soccer, this is a two-way street in terms of US Soccer and MLS as party to this, getting some information, some internal communications from NASL.
Yeah, both sides are definitely going to be going after that information to help their case. In the case of US Soccer, they're probably focusing more on US or NASL's business practices, decisions they've made regarding their league, where they place teams. One of the teams, for example, San Francisco Delta's placing one out there, and whether that was a good decision or not, and whether that would have led to the demise of NASL, notwithstanding whatever sanctioning decisions US Soccer made. So those are the kind of things that US Soccer is going to go after. NASL is obviously going after whatever information they believe can prove the conspiracy or collusion claims, text messages, phone calls, emails, memos, all that kind of stuff will be relevant in the context of proving that claim. And some of that stuff goes back years. There's basically a limit on most of that stuff to about 2008, because NASL was not in existence prior to that date. So there's a lot of stuff prior to that which isn't particularly relevant and wouldn't prove anything. So basically, you can start looking around 2008 for interesting items that may help NASL's case.
Miki, one of the things that you and I talked a lot about was when the court in Brooklyn made its judgment early on last year. One of the things early on this year, one of the things we learned was that in the filing, the court suggested that there were some merits to what NASL was suggesting, that it wasn't out of, and of course I'm paraphrasing, but that it wasn't out of the realm of possibility that there was collusion. So between that time and now, have we learned anything more that is not behind a paywall somewhere or behind closed books somewhere that confirms that suggestion by the Brooklyn court? In other words, is NASL any closer to winning this thing, or are we just going to have to wait for discovery?
The short answer is we're going to have to wait for discovery. And what you're referencing is in the motion for the preliminary injunction. The judge basically said that as it pertained to the 2015 attempt to change the professional league standards only a year after they had changed them in 2014, right. The court found that that was questionable, and the motives for doing so were suspicious. So that is definitely where NASL will probably go to really try to drive the point home that there was inclusion. Why are you changing the professional league standards a year after you already did, and while we are trying to apply for Division I sanctioning? So there's a lot of smoke there, and the judge certainly thought there was, but just found that it wasn't enough to grant them the preliminary injunction. So a lot of any conversations that happened around that time to provide a basis for changing the standards 1 year after already doing it is certainly something that NASL is going to focus on. But as to what we know, there's precious little at that point, or at this point, because most of this stuff is under a protective order or under seal, and it's just not stuff we're going to be privy to until a trial, and maybe not even then, depending on the nature of those communications or memorandums or documents. So people who are waiting for some agreement to drop out of thin air and just be published on football leagues may be waiting for a while.
Huh. I mean, football leagues get their hands on some stuff. I don't know if you want to say that, Mick.
I'm not guaranteeing it, that's for sure.
We should add to top off what Miki said. Rishi, I asked Rishi if Rishi Sehgal if the Discovery had unveiled anything, and he said that it had, but of course he couldn't. The question I asked him was, has it revealed anything that would validate NASL's claim? And he said that it had, but he couldn't discuss it because of the protective order, as Miki just suggested. So
I want to get to the court. I want to get to the CAS, the CAS filing as well. I want to make sure we have some time for that. But before we do, I think just briefly here, maybe in a minute or so, let's try to reason out the potential fallout either of US Soccer winning this lawsuit or of the NASL winning the lawsuit. I think it's more fun, maybe not fun. If you're an agent of chaos, maybe you think it's more fun to imagine the NASL winning. Miki, do we have any idea what that means for U.S. Soccer if NASL wins this lawsuit?
Oh boy, it would be a game changer in the in North American soccer, because at that point there's a declaratory judgment likely imposed which says that U.S. Soccer is not allowed to regulate professional soccer in the United States. There's already a ruling in a Chicago federal court, don't quote me on that, but I believe that's where it is, which said that U.S. Soccer does not have the ability to regulate professional soccer. That was in the Camping World case, I believe it is. Or Champions, yeah, that's correct. So if you go read that case and the conclusions that the court drew, they said that U.S. Soccer does not have the ability to regulate U.S. Soccer. So, but it's not a precedent anywhere else. So, assuming that you got that kind of global ruling, that would prevent U.S. Soccer from basically having any regulatory role in professional soccer, which allows basically everyone to do what they want going forward. Now, FIFA may not be a fan of that because there needs to be a regulatory body, and so they may threaten something, but that doesn't mean really anything. It's not worth the threat that it's written on. So it's chaos. Team Chaos would have a good day.
Certainly, FIFA can't override, the U.S. courts. I mean, we're talking about law taking precedence over whatever FIFA wants. And I guess here the other question, the other side of it is, if U.S. Soccer prevails, I guess it's status quo. We go back and presumably the NASL is gone for good.
Yeah, that would appear what would happen. This is all subject to appeals, obviously, which could take years. But assuming that it just left, assuming one party or the other left it be and just decided to take the loss, so to speak, then yeah, it's basically a status quo. It would depend on what the ruling says, because there is that ruling that we just talked about. So it's a matter of, if you get two conflicting rulings, then someone's got to make a decision on what it all means. But at least for the time being, U.S. Soccer would continue in their regulatory role. There may be a push to try to get something through Congress to fix this potential mess. But again, what's the likelihood that there's going to be some type of agreement in Congress that allows this thing to be cleaned up?
That's what we need. It's Congress involved in soccer, Nipun. I guess, yeah, why not? Sure. Everybody else has got their hands in it.
Jason, one thing we should say, something you said that's interesting, is you suggested, that obviously American law is going to take precedent over any FIFA ruling, and that's obviously true. But we have to look past that step and recognize that if U.S. Soccer goes against FIFA because of U.S. laws, it runs the risk of being non-FIFA compliant. And if it is non-FIFA compliant, U.S. Soccer as an entity, its entire definition changes per FIFA statute. So it's a totally complicated situation.
Yeah, we don't know. I mean, it could be. I think the apocalypse scenario is that U.S. Soccer is no longer allowed to compete internationally. That there are no sanctioned leagues under FIFA, which means no FIFA sanctioned players are going to want to play here because they won't be able to play internationally because they won't be registered in the FIFA. I mean, we can imagine those things, but we're obviously premature because we don't quite know what this case is going to bring. Okay, I want to talk about the filing in the Court of Arbitration for Sport. This, of course, is the pro-rel case. This is Silva and the money behind Miami FC. And although I think MP Silva has declared bankruptcy, I think we're at a point now where MP Silva as an entity is struggling. But there is still a case pending in the Court of Arbitration for Sport. Dennis Crowley of Kingston Stockade has been involved with this as well. And Nipun, do you want to frame this up a little bit before we go to Miki for the legal side of it?
Yeah, first of all, I should say that MP Silva is only part owned by Riccardo Silva, and it might not even have him involved in it anymore. I'm not sure, but either way, Riccardo Silva financially is doing fine as far as I know.
Sure. Okay.
So the CAS filing, as you said, a composite of Riccardo Silva and Dennis Crowley coming together here to file this in the Court of Arbitration for Sport. The Court of Arbitration for Sport is something that was founded in the 80s, I believe, 1983, by the International Olympics Committee. It's essentially considered the Supreme Court for sport, yet it's not really a court. It's more somewhere you go where if you enter binding arbitration, you can have your case heard and come to a conclusion. This particular filing, Jason, the goal of it is to bring US Soccer into compliance with Article 9 of FIFA, which, depending on your interpretation, suggests that pro-rel is a mandatory requirement. The key word there being depending on your interpretation.
All right, Miki. So, obviously, as Nipun just laid out, this isn't a court per se, but it has the weight of that, at least in the world of sport, for a lot of people. So what is the goal here? I mean, let's go back to the same sort of formula. What's the goal here for Silva, for Crowley, and for anybody involved in sort of suing U.S. Soccer over the lack of promotion relegation?
Yeah, well, obviously the goal is to bring U.S. Soccer into compliance with the FIFA Article 9, as Nipun laid out. Obviously, there is a problem with this particular litigation and the antitrust litigation, which in theory would prevent U.S. Soccer from implementing any type of promotion relegation. So you've got that one angle as well. And then the other problem, obviously, is that it says that it's a principally should be reliant on sporting merit. It's not necessarily a shall. It's a shall, but there's some caveats there. And there's some financial considerations that are also put into place there. So it's difficult to say how that one's going to ultimately game out and whether it is anything that U.S. Soccer would have to abide by, even if a ruling came back adverse to U.S. Soccer's current position. It seems more advisory, I guess, than anything else. And so it's difficult to say what U.S. Soccer would do as a result of that. They may say, okay, great, but it's still in violation of our antitrust laws. We can't force U.S. Soccer to do this, or we can't force MLS to do this. If NASL and a couple of leagues want to get together and do it on their own, they're free to do that, subject to the professional league standards, which of course raises another issue. But the problem there is just that it's up in the air as to whether there is any legal authority domestically to mandate that U.S. Soccer follow whatever mandate FIFA came down with.
I think it's clear, Nipun, that based on what Miki just told us, and knowing that this is, you have to enter into agreement for binding arbitration. You basically have to say, okay, we're going to go with whatever this body decides. That based on all of that, the only way we get to the result that Silva and Crowley and the parties to this claim want is for people to agree to do pro-rel, not because the Court of Arbitration for Sport says you have to.
Well, I think, and again, Miki's better, he understands the legal implication of this way better than I do. And I read a paper by Professor Professor Miki Turner, by Professor Stephen Bank, who wrote a very interesting article about this late 2017, I think he did. And he said what you're suggesting, that one of the reasons he felt that this wasn't going to end up in success for Silva and Crowley, is because there was no way to ensure that whatever CAS decides will be implicated. However, my pushback, not to Professor Bank, who's way more informed than I am, my pushback to this idea, however, is the same thing. If CAS suggests that promotion relegation is a requirement, which I really don't think they will. I don't think that they will. That's what they decide. But let's assume that that's what they decide. If US Soccer says no, we don't agree with this because of the way the American law is set up, that it would lead to more lawsuits, etc., is the fact that US Soccer is going against CAS, going against FIFA statutes. One of FIFA statutes suggests that their arbitration is settled in CAS. So if they go against CAS, and there is some legal precedent to this. Recently, there was a case in Belgium where the Belgian FA went against CAS, maybe 2 months ago, as recently as 2 months ago. But we don't know how this will play out. And that's what's really confusing about all of this is, regardless of what the outcome is, it is not an end product of that outcome. It's still a continuation. So in other words, all of this is going to be going on into 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022. And that's both disconcerting and great for someone like Miki, because he can just churn out more content.
I was going to say, I mean, they're just lining up for Miki to analyze. Obviously, you mentioned Professor Stephen Bank from UCLA. I think Miki and Professor Bank have become sort of mini celebrities in the soccer world because there's been so much legal shenanigans to analyze here. I mean, so we don't have basically what we're saying here. The conclusion we're coming to on both these cases, Miki, is that these are open-ended as far as we're concerned. We don't really know what the timeline is on either of them. I don't imagine that CAS has even scheduled a hearing around the promotion relegation claim.
I had actually heard that they had some time ago, but that was back in April of last year, and that was just kind of some behind-the-scenes chatter. Nothing I was able to substantiate, but at this point, it's basically been radio silent since then. So we just have no idea where they're at right now, and it's going to be one of those things is we're not going to know anything until we know something, until some report leaks or drops. But we have no idea where things are on that case right now.
Look, these two cases, a lot of other things for Miki to analyze. More reason for us to bring him back here on Lower League America. And if you pay attention to Compass Football, you may see more of Miki in the future, perhaps on his own program. I think that's it, gentlemen. I think we've come to a...
We should add that we did reach out to Dennis Crowley and we reached out to Miami FC and to ask about the CAS filing. And they either didn't comment or declined to comment, we should say.
Okay, right. And look, I mean, not sure there's a lot in it for either one of those parties to be commenting right now, especially as Miki said, we thought we might get a hearing. We're not going to get a hearing. So the legal elements of American soccer continue to roil and bubble and boil, and we'll see how that ends up. That's going to do it for us here on Lower League America, episode 9. I want to thank Nipun Chopra as always. I want to thank Miki Turner for his contributions as well. Make sure you're following Miki on Twitter at TurnerESQ, following his blog, Soccer ESQ, and again, pay attention to Compass Football. Nipun, any parting words before we get out of here?
Man, these lawyers just keep getting richer and richer.
Everybody's getting paid in the law world when it comes to soccer. Make sure you're following Compass Football on Facebook, YouTube. We're on Twitter as well. We're on Instagram. More stuff coming at you in the near future. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week. Bye.